Welcome back, Seekers. We're here with the Week 7 running back tiers, so we can get you some dubs this weekend. Who are our RB1 overalls this week, Kraig?
We have Derrick Henry, Jonthan Taylor, and Alvin Kamara.
Not really much of a surprise here. All have good matchups, and then Derrick Henry. He's like 30, 40 points ahead of any other running back. I don't know that he can keep up this type of production, but the team's going to have to lean on him just because of where they're at. Do you have any concern that any of these guys give you a not RB1 type week this week?
I don't know. Barring anything unforeseen like an injury, I think they're all very safe.
Okay, top 6 RBs. Who do we got?
Darrell Henderson.
Darrell Henderson's kind of a no-brainer against Detroit. I think I've been telling everyone to fire up their Rams this week because it could be a bloodbath. So I'm not really concerned with either of these guys. How about you?
No, I don't. And, the only one, interestingly, of them that the team had thought might fall into that RB1 overall, depending on game scripting, was Aaron Jones. A couple guys had him up there. Most of them didn't. But they're outside of him, everybody had Henderson as a top 6 sort of guy, but not potentially falling into that higher tier. So
for sure. All right, so who are our RB1s?
Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Cordarrelle Patterson, Leonard Fournette.
The kind of season we're having when a wide receiver is one of your top running backs.
J.D. McKissic, Darrell Williams.
So with the RB1s, if McKissic is back there, so if Gibson's hurt and they elevate Patterson to come up and do some things, do you have any thoughts about McKissic maybe jumping up into the top 6 or RB1 overall type consideration?
If it's a closer game than we think with Green Bay, majority of us are thinking, but Green Bay still leading where they're playing. They, being Washington, are playing from behind. I could see it just because we know McKissic thrives in that passing game role, and he's a great pass catcher, and he gets you points even when Gibson is healthy through that. So is it conceivable? Yeah, I can see it, but I think there's enough other downfield things you're going to have to be doing with it. McLaurin, Ricky Seals-Jones, or Humphreys Carter, some of these things where it's not just going to be focused on McKissic. Patterson, I think, will probably get a few balls tossed his way too to see what he can do. They certainly liked what they saw in college from him when they signed him as a priority free agent, and they stashed him. They like him. So I think Patterson will get more play than some people are thinking, because I don't think McKissic, even in one game, can just have that whole load thrust upon him.
For sure. All right, so who are our RB2s this week? This is an interesting group of RB2s because Josh Jacobs, talent-wise, is an RB1, but the Raiders don't seem to want to use him as an RB1. Edmonds has had some kind of back-end RB1 type weeks. What do you make of these guys?
I think Chubba has an opportunity here. They talked about focusing on the run game more. Teams have been able to run against the Giants. And, I think he's in a good situation where you can see that happening. Josh Jacobs, if they decide to focus on him and the run game, certainly an opportunity. One of the interesting things I see on here, and I don't know, I can't speak for the minds of everyone, and I try to put myself in their place and mindset. Damien Harris, I just find very interesting. He's a guy that he's succeeded some of his snaps to Stevenson last week, and normally he had been up higher, and I certainly think he has that upside if he ends up being the main focus, but he had been banged up. Brandon Bolden really wasn't part of the game plan last week when they needed to throw, so I don't think he's that big of a concern. So seeing him in this RB2 I thought was a bit interesting. And the same thing with Gibson. Now, the thing to remember here, McKissic we're talking about, if we assume that Gibson isn't playing, we see him up in that RB1 level. If Gibson plays, they're still going to be having McKissic play, which is, I think, why you're seeing Gibson be below McKissic here, because McKissic's, we think, going to be taking away some of that passing down work. And if Gibson is banged up and playing, he's not going to be fully healthy, and he might not have that full workload as normal. So in a given week when everybody's healthy, seeing these two listed like that, it's like, what are you guys doing? We get that. But we're talking about two different situations. If Gibson isn't playing, where do we think McKissic's going to be? And if Gibson does play, where do we think Gibson's going to be? So they're right on top of each other, probably outside of the normal.
Yeah, and Gibson was back at practice again today. Him and Seals-Jones did logs in practice. Man, that's a fractured shin. That's just, you got to think that keeps limiting him until it fully heals up. It's just hard to trust him as a high-end RB1 until we know that he's fully healthy. So it's a tough situation.
Coming up, I know that they have divisional title aspirations at least, so you want your best guys out there, but if you're hoping to get that far and you have Gibson, you're going to need him healthy probably to get that far and do that. So wait a week or two here, let him heal up through the bye, get a few weeks off. That's my thinking, but of course I don't run an NFL team, and there's very good reasons for that.
True. All right, so who are our flex options? Wow, that is a hefty group all over the place. A guy that wasn't even in the lineup, or I don't even know if Johnson was even active up until just recently. Then you got guys like Mike Davis who were preseason darlings. People were saying, oh, top end RB1 type talent and value this year. Hasn't really produced that. Then you have Khalil Herbert, rookie, who showed out last week. You got more, some rookies. What do you make of this tier? And do you feel more comfortable with any of these guys over the lot of them? Like, if you had to pick.
I do like Mike Davis as a flex most weeks, and certainly I think he applies for this week. I like Khalil Herbert more as a flex than I do Damien Williams as an RB2 myself. I think they showed, they being the Bears, that they're going to have both of them get an opportunity, and probably at a lower acquisition cost of what you had to get Herbert. I like Herbert more as a flex, and I'm more comfortable going against Tampa. I think they're both flexes personally, but David Johnson, I think, is a fine flex. He didn't get as much receiving work last week. There had been an issue. Some of that had gone to Philip Lindsay. We'll see what happens there. And Ramondre Stevenson, I really like. They're going against the Jets. He got playing time last week, and I think they're probably going to continue that. PPR, I like Felton more than I like Dearness Johnson myself. If the Lions game goes as you predict, I think Sony Michel will be a fine flex too, because it won't just all be Henderson. They don't want to run him into the ground if there's no reason to. And it might be late game garbage points. But as our friend G-Man J says, garbage time points count the same as first, second, third quarter points.
Fantasy football was built around garbage time points. It just is what it is. So our sleeper category is filled with a lot of guys that are very dangerous. If you play him, Hines, could this be the week that he blows up and gets you 20-point plus game? Sure. Could he give you 4? Sure. Is there a guy in here that you would trust over the lot of them if you had to pick one to play?
Mine would be Devonta Freeman. I thought he looked the best out of the guys that we had seen in that game. Lev Bell got some late touches is what it felt like. Tyson Williams has been, I think, a scratch the past few weeks, like healthy and active. I'm not trusting him myself. Mark Ingram will get the carries, that first, second down work for Houston. He's going to get touches. You're aware of that. We have Michael Carter, which has become the RB1 for the Jets. He's only a flex, so it makes sense that they're RB2, Ty Johnson, the guy that's getting most of the work behind him. Sure, you could see a world where Ty Johnson, something happens and he does a nice game for you, but you could also see he just 5 carries and 2 catches for 30 yards total or something, so it is dangerous. Trey Sermon's kind of the same way. He's taking a backseat to Elijah Mitchell. Will he break out? I'm not counting on it here. I don't think Giovanni Bernard has much value because I don't see them being behind, they being Tampa in that game. And of course, Leonard Fournette has proven himself once again, despite what some people say, to be adept at actually catching the ball when they want to throw him the ball. If they're up huge late, could Ronald Jones get you garbage time? Because Bruce Arians will not let go of that Ronald Jones player on his team, despite supposedly some calls looking for him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can see why you want a player that knows the system, that can perform, and has shown, albeit sparingly, that he is able to perform well for the team. But yeah, some of these things, Jarrett Patterson, you just don't know how much they're going to use him in that game. And any of these guys, Devonta being the Le'Veon Bell 3-4 touches in a game instead of leading that team sort of like he did last week.
Yeah, it's hard to trust any of these guys. If I had to guess, Nyheim Hines is the only one out of this group that I would start in a league if I had to in a pinch. And even then, I like the player and I like the potential, but you never know what they're going to do.
Yeah, the past 3 weeks, I think he's had under 7 fantasy points. Like, they just haven't been using him because Jonthan Taylor's just broken out once again and shown that he can do it all for them. So they haven't had need to.
All right, that's it, people. These are your tiers for the week.
We should note here, too, actually, because it's not in here. In that middle of the sleeper tier group near the bottom, we don't have player cards for them. But DJ Dallas and Rashad Penny, we don't really sort of know what they're going to do with that second running back spot behind Alex Collins. We have up there in the RB2. Rashad Penny, they say he's ready to go and ready to perform. He is a former first-round pick. So certainly, if he's the guy, and he could find himself getting into a timeshare, which would be good for him. But DJ Dallas has been that guy, especially with passing down work more so for that second running back for the team. So they're both in that sleeper level because having more than one behind Collins really just muddles the pond.
Yeah, Penny's got the talent, but he just can't stay on the field. And Dallas has some talent, but it's more passing game chops for sure. So buyer beware, or player beware, however you want to work it. And that's it. So thank you guys for hanging out with us as always. Comment below if you got questions.